And then you bag the item and you put it in
You're
evidence.
cataloging the whole.
Page 2, item number 14, K-bar Marine Corps style knife sheath found, next box, found on floor next to victim number 3.
Next to the girl.
The girl. And it's not a typo where he said found on the 3rd floor next to the victim.
Yeah.
It says found on the floor next to victim number 3. In the very next line, it identifies her again as victim number 3. So there are some anomalies, and you would look at this and say, now, wait a minute. Are we going to take police at their word and say that we're going to believe you? And the answer is yes. So should we believe him when he say he found the knife sheath on the floor? One might argue yes.
Yeah.
Then why in all the photographs and why in the analysis is it found in the bed under her thigh? So there are so many anomalies like this. And then there are chain of custody issues. The biggest one is this. Ann Taylor, in trying to defend her client, would go to Judge Hippler and file motions. I'm not a lawyer, but it's pretty common knowledge. Some of them called motions in limine, and there is a thing called a Franks hearing. Franks is not Frank apostrophe S. It's a guy named Franks, like the Brady disclosure, which is Supreme Court law that says that if a witness is deemed to be corrupted in some manner, they lie in a case, they're found to commit fraud in a case, whatever, they will always be identified as a Franks exclusion. They can still testify, but they have to announce that they've somehow jaded, right?
Yeah.
So there was a Franks hearing asked for before Judge Hippler by Ann Taylor, the defense attorney, and she came in, lead investigator of the case, asked him if the FBI ever told him that Bryan Kohberger's DNA was found on the knife sheath, and he said no. One word, no, period. Oh, everybody who knows anything about this case thinks that Bryan Kohberger's DNA was found on a knife sheath. So then the Franks exclusion, they can still testify, but they have to announce that they've somehow jaded, right?
Yeah.
So there was a Franks hearing asked for before Judge Hippler by Ann Taylor, the defense attorney, and she came in, lead investigator of the case, asked him if the FBI ever told him that Bryan Kohberger's DNA was found on the knife sheath, and he said no. One word, no, period. Oh, everybody who knows anything about this case thinks that Bryan Kohberger's DNA was found on a knife sheath. So then the question is, well, wait a minute. What do you mean the FBI never told you that? She said, what did the FBI tell you? And he said that we should treat this with no more credibility than a tip.
Oh, great.
I can't remember if he said anonymous tip, but they said a tip. So then you go back and you say, well, wait. How is this conceivable that the evidence is a white car?
Millions of those, yeah.
Cell tower,
not
maybe
great.
more than not great.
Yeah.
And now you've got the DNA. And you have, in a court hearing before the judge, the lead detective in the case saying the FBI never told him the DNA was on the knife, Bryan Kohberger's DNA was on the knife sheath, and that it was sufficient only to the point where it should be given the weight of a tip.
And they themselves didn't have their own DNA lab to send it to. So they were reliant on the FBI?
Great question. The Idaho State Police do have a crime lab.
Okay.
The sample was sent, the knife sheath was sent to the crime lab. They sent a DNA sample to a crime lab in Texas, Woodlands, Texas, called Othram Labs. It was a private lab. So the state of Idaho didn't want to build a lab themselves. Yeah. So they contracted to a private laboratory. They took the evidence to that laboratory, and they gave the evidence to the laboratory. In the Franks hearing, now this is not me, I'm just reciting what's in the Franks hearing, Ann Taylor, the defense attorney, asked them about the DNA and said, where are the reports? The whole point was, you say that his DNA was found on the crime scene. Where's the reports? Yeah. And they said, there are no reports. And she said, what are you talking about? And they said that they identified the DNA sample on the knife from the knife sheath and tied it to one of 4 brothers. And she said, who are these brothers? And he said, I don't know. I don't have the name. Why not? Because there's no report. Where's the report? I don't know. And it goes through this whole thing. But the salient feature, to come back to your question, is, and it's a great question, is were any of those brothers named Kohberger? And the answer was no. Yeah. So the Idaho State Police took the DNA sample back and they sent it to the FBI laboratory. And it brings up the next question. There are 2 types of DNA. You take a cheek swab, you send it off, and they do a genetic genealogy research, and they say you come from, I'm quarter Cherokee and quarter Irish and quarter Lithuanian and quarter whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then you have the DNA, which is matching this, the DNA that I just put on this, to a sample from my cheek, and it says, that's my DNA. That's a different type of DNA. This DNA, they never tied to Brian Koberger. They